Hello and good morning or good afternoon or whenever you're watching this video. This is chapter 11. We're looking at motives and personality. And in this first video, we are going to do the first section, basic concepts, where we're going to be looking at needs, press, and explain a little bit about what press is, and apperception and the TAT. So let's move on with motivation. Why do people do what they do? Why do people want what they want? I'm going to start with this video. I love this video. And it's a nice little bridge into what we're going to be talking about today. Okay, so amazing, amazing. I guess the point of that video is, in order to do that, okay, this girl, I think she's going to UCLA. She's at university, she's at UCLA, which is X amount of hours a week, achieving good grades. And in addition to that, she's training, 4 to 6 hours a day in gymnastics. She's doing probably, lifts and weights and nutrition. And just crazy amount of motivation to do this. So two things. We're going to talk about the difference between intrinsic motivation and extrinsic. Okay, this is obviously deeply intrinsically motivated. Intrinsic meaning, you could just see how much she loved this, right? She was just loving the process of this. She wasn't doing this for any sort of external reward at all. It was just a pure love for gymnastics and the music and the dancing, and she was just right in that moment, right? And then the other thing is, why does she want this? Like, what drives people to, what motivates her to be working, 10, 12 hours a day on this and school and everything like that? And then secondly, why does she want this? Why do people choose the goals that they do choose? So motives and personality. So we're going to be talking in this chapter about how people's motives, their internal motives, which can be conscious or unconscious, how those motives guide our behavior and guide us to do what we do, and then also sort of influence our personality as well. So motivational psychologists ask what drives people to do what they do. They search for motives that propel people to do what they do. They can be conscious or unconscious mental processes that generate intrapsychic influence on behavior. And then again, we said this. Why do they do what they do, and why do they want what they want? So there's Jessie Fleming, right? She's soccer, obviously. doing the same, very similar thing to Nia. I think she's at UCLA too. But anyways, and then, a non-sports reference, like going to med school. Like, why do people want to do that? What drives them to want to be having that as their goal, right? And pursuing hours and hours and hours and hours of studying. So first, let's look at the basic concepts according to this intrapsychic perspective. So motives are internal states that arouse and direct behavior towards a goal. It's important to notice that in this particular perspective, motives are caused by a deficit. You are lacking something. So you are in a state of tension or stress or need of some kind, and that need drives you to satisfy that need, and then the tension is reduced. Right? So motives propel people to perceive, think, and act in ways to serve and satisfy a need. So your motives also influence the way you see things and think about things. So this is the example of the deficit of being hungry. So you're hungry. The need is that you need food. The motive is hunger. Then you've got thoughts and fantasies about food, fantasizing about a big meal, perceiving a rock that looks like a loaf of bread. So it's influencing the way you think. You're thinking about food. And then behaviors. You're going to go to the store, you're going to go buy food, you're going to swing by a Subway, even though you don't have time before class, but you have to because you're hungry. Okay, so motives are part of the intrapsychic domain for many reasons, but they also share, this intrapsychic domain shares some similarities with the dispositional domain that we did previously. So it's part of the intrapsychic domain because motivational psychologists stress the importance of internal psychological needs and urges. So they're internal. Some of them are thought to be outside of awareness, right? So unconscious. Just like they said, people don't always know what they want. They don't know why they do what they do. It's because they are unconscious motives. And because they're unconscious motives, if you want to try to understand them, you have to somehow access them, right? And they do that with methods like projective techniques, free associations, and fantasies. So the idea being here that, and we're going to get into the TAT, like they'll show a picture and you're going to describe the picture, and your unconscious motives are going to cause you to perceive the picture in a certain way, and how you describe that picture reveals your unconscious drives and motives and needs. But we're going to get into that later. Motive psychologists share some core ideas with dispositional psychologists. Believe people differ from one another in the type and strength of the motives. People have individual differences here. You can measure these differences. They're stable over time. And what is important is that these differences cause or are associated with important life outcomes. So your motives, and we're going to talk about the big 3 motives in the next video. Your motives. So you've got, let's say you've got a high need for achievement. Okay, if that's really, really high, then that's going to drive you to have, again, the perceptions and the thoughts and the behaviors in the direction of achievement, and you're going to want certain things. You're going to make certain decisions in your life about what major you're going to take at university, what job you're going to take, how hard you're going to work. It affects your life. And we'll talk more about that later. So the first thing we need to talk about is need. There's need and there's press in this section. So Murray's theory of needs. Okay, he was the first researcher to come out and develop the theory of motivation, 1930s to 1960s. It's similar to the concept of drive. So need refers to states of tension, the state of tension of being hungry, or the state of tension because you're lacking something. It drives you into action. and it also makes us see what we want to see. The process of reducing the tension, that's the part that's satisfying, not the tensionless state per se. So let's say that right now we are tensionless. We are sitting here and we are not needing anything and we are at peace with everything. No tension. Having the tension, increased tension, till you get hungry, right? And you're starving and you have this deficit. You eat. It's not the eating necessarily that is satisfying. It's the return to the tensionless state. That return back to normal is what is satisfying. So in the text, you're going to see a chart, and it outlines Murray's theory of needs. There's 6 major categories. And within these categories, there's all different types, right? There's ambition needs, there's needs to defend status, for power, social affection needs, all of these different types of needs. Within these needs, there's two different kinds. There's physical needs like food, water, safety, sex, all the physical needs that we have. And those are primary needs. And then there's psychogenic needs, which are the mental or emotional. So need for affiliation, need for belongingness, esteem needs, all of these types of needs. So take a look in the text in there. So under each of these 6 major categories, I think there's like around 3 needs in each. So look those over. So each need is associated with desire, intention, a set of emotions that goes along with it, and then action tendencies, what you do to satisfy that need. It's important to notice, so each person is going to have a little bit of each of these needs, but in varying degrees, right? They're on a continuum. So for example, everybody's got different types of needs to different degrees, and these needs all interact with each other to make us who we are, and our personality and our behavior and how we present ourselves to the world. So for example, high levels of some needs interact with amounts of various other needs. Interaction makes the motive concept dynamic. So somebody who's high in dominance and high in affiliation, they say are likely to be a good leader. So they're high in dominance, they like to organize, they like to delegate, they like to take charge and accomplish things and get things done. But they're also high in affiliation, which means they're going to have the social skills and they're going to have certain emotional intelligence, be able to read people's emotion. They're going to have empathy for people's situation, who is struggling with the project right now, who may need extra help, who's doing well, and they're going to have good relationships with their team. The team feels that they care. The leader cares. Okay? So that type of person versus somebody who's high in dominance, same as this person, but low in affiliation. So they're high in dominance and they want to run the group and delegate and tell people what to do and get the project done. But they're low affiliation. They don't care really about their teammates. They don't have any empathy. They're just wanting to get this done. They don't connect emotionally with the people. So they're going to present this way and they're not going to be a good leader. People are not going to want to work with them. They're not going to trust them. They're not going to be very efficient with their work because they'll be very low motivation, right? So press, this relates to this theory of needs. You have all of these needs, but the needs need to be pressed by elements in the environment. Okay, all of these needs are just not active at the same time. They are active when there's environmental press or push for the need to exert itself, so to say. Okay, so for example, a high need for affiliation won't affect another person's behavior without environmental press. So if you have a high need for affiliation, there has to be an environment around it. So the presence of another person, and so your need for affiliation is going to come out with your behavior and the way you speak and the way you smile and the way you chat with this person and you're happy and your emotions. Or without people. There's no one around. Okay. And then you're going to be feeling maybe isolation, sadness, loneliness. They talk about two different types of press. There's alpha press and beta press. So alpha press is the objective reality, if you can say that. So that's just what's out there. That is like, say, a situation, something that happened. Then there's beta press, and that's the one that you perceive. And remember, everyone perceives things differently. So an example, they talk about someone smiles at the store. Okay, so you're in the store, you're doing stuff, and somebody sort of smiles at you, this stranger. So somebody with a high need for affiliation, they're going to perceive that maybe as friendly. Like, oh, well, that's nice. Hello, how are you? Okay. Whereas somebody with a low need for affiliation, and somebody smiles at them, and they're thinking, oh, well, that was a smirk. That's suspicious. Like, what's their problem? Okay, they're going to interpret it negatively. So that is press. It's how the environment influences or affects, or it has to be there to press the need. And the final section is apperception in the TAT. So Murray emphasized needs influence how people perceive the environment, especially when the environment is ambiguous. Apperception is the act of interpreting and perceiving meaning in the environment. And we all know this, right? There'll be the same situation, and maybe your friend comes and like, oh my gosh, can you believe that, And it's like, that's not what happened. That's not what I saw. And people perceive things completely differently, okay? And how they perceive them, like I said, comes from, it's indicative of the needs that are unconscious. So that's how we get to this thematic apperception test. So what they do is they present these ambiguous pictures. Let me make this one bigger. Oops. Like that. Okay? And so you look at this picture and you make up a story about this picture. What's happening here? What is this kid thinking? Why is this kid sitting there in this place at this time, and what's happening next? So you can make up a little story in your head. And we did this in class. This is a fun one to do in class because people's stories are usually quite different and entertaining. But what you came up with is supposed to be revealing your unconscious needs in some way, your unconscious thoughts, because you're projecting your beliefs and your feelings onto this picture. Research has shown with people with different needs do respond differently to themes in the picture. So there is some evidence that people do. Okay. Some argue that the TAT is less useful than other methods such as questionnaires. So in a questionnaire, it's a direct self-report, pencil and paper. They ask questions about their drives, their needs, what they want, that sort of thing, and the person answers. So we've got two different methods, TAT and questionnaire. There's a difference between them, and we're going to get to that. But before we do, I'm just going to mention the multi-motive grid. So because there's these two different methods, and people argue the TAT is better, and some argue that the questionnaire is better, of course, somebody comes along and says, hey, let's combine them, and that'll solve everything. So what they do is they've got these 14 pictures selected to arouse the three motives, achievement, power, and intimacy. Okay, so when you've seen these pictures and you've talked about these things and your motives are all fired up because you've been thinking about them and feeling them, then you do the questionnaire. And that's supposed to make it more valid, right? The more correct and true answers, reflecting your unconscious motives. Then we talk a little bit about the TAT and the questionnaire measures of motives. Do they measure different things? So in class, we talked about this, and people nailed it, which was Fantastic. When you're doing the TAT, you're reflecting your thoughts and perceptions and needs onto the story unconsciously, right? Whereas the questionnaire is a self-report. And what that basically means is that one of them, the TAT, is measuring implicit motivation, so unconscious desires, aspirations, and needs, whereas the survey is measuring explicit motives. It reflects a person's self-awareness. If you're going to be reporting on your motives by yourself, then they're conscious motives because you're aware of them. So it's reflecting their self-awareness of their conscious motives. So it's two different things. Okay? And one difference it's important to know is that the TAT, research has shown that the TAT, the results, are better at predicting long-term behavioral trends over time. So kind of more deeper motives, more long-lasting, and they affect long-term behaviors over time. Whereas explicit motives, they're better at predicting responses to immediate specific situations and choose behaviors and attitudes. So more of the short-term immediate predictions. The other piece that it mentions, and it doesn't say about the other two motives, power and intimacy, but it does say for achievement, research has been done to demonstrate, there was a meta-analysis, like over 100 studies of a need for achievement, and they did find that there was a difference between implicit and explicit motivation within need for achievement. Okay, so when they're doing these studies, people who did the TAT versus people who did the questionnaire, there was a significant difference in their answers. Okay, perfect. So that is the end of part 1. We're at 22 minutes. We're going to stop there, and I will see you in part 2 in the next video.